Carney Phelps was 12 years old and lived with her parents in a two-bedroom row house nestled in the neighborhood of Middle Village at 74th and Penelope Street, Queens, New York. The Phelps house was a 10-minute walk from 4 different cemeteries and was surrounded by 15 more. The area was known as Cemetery Land because raising a family there meant literally living amongst the dead. It was all Carney had ever known in her life, so it never felt odd to her. Parks with tall trees and grass were a rarity in New York, but not to anyone that lived in Cemetery Land. Girls her age, at least to Carney, seemed to hold interests in YouTube comedy shows, boutique stores where jeans cost more than a utility bill, and whatever the heck a geotag scavenger hunt was. Apparently, it involved taking a photo of yourself in a remote Middle Village location, seeing if your friends could replicate the photo, and posting the coordinates to Instagram for the original poster to verify. Carney did enjoy exploring the area, but unlike her friends, she'd lived there her entire life. Identifying the locations was never difficult, often annoying the other girls for playing the game incorrectly by blurting out the answer instead of running off to take a photo. She didn't have a phone to actually take a photo, nor did she particularly want one. The majority of her free time was consumed by something none of her friends had any interest in. Carney Phelps was a builder. Legos, Connects, Lincoln Logs, Jenga blocks, old boxes, a plastic shelf for clothes she folded and stacked under her bed instead of using. She combined all of these materials to create a city that often spilled out of her closet onto the floor of her bedroom, against her mother's numerous protests. Each creation was a thriving district that made up an important piece of a larger city, a mammoth, intricate construction she called Civilizanzibean. Since she had neither the space nor the materials to leave it all up, once a district was completed to her liking, her father, who was a part-time pizza photographer for local restaurants, took a series of photos to document the individual districts. Printouts of the photographs obscured practically every inch of wall space in her room. On the back of her door was the Super Eatery District, 7 towering skyscrapers in the center of the city. The first building housed barnyard animals. The second, aquatic life like scallops, lobsters, and the northeastern peaky-toe crab, a crustacean she'd read about in Crabber's Digest. The third, fourth, and fifth buildings grew funguses, vegetables, and fruit she wanted to try, like the African horned cucumber, also known as blowfish fruit, which the blowfishes in Building 2 were fed on holidays as a special treat. Building 6 was a giant bakery with 17 floors dedicated exclusively to the city's birthday cake operation. Building 7 was smaller than the others and was more like a 30-story warehouse. All food from the 6 other buildings was sent there and placed on shelves for the denizens of Civilizanzibean to come and take whatever they needed, free of charge. Carney believed that everyone should always have good food to eat, something she knew about all too well. There were times when one or both of her parents were between jobs, stretching food money so thin that breakfast, lunch, and dinner were nothing more than off-brand bags of old cereal topped with tap water from the kitchen sink. Over her bed was the Jobby Loop, a stretch of offices, shops, and factories where everyone in Civilizanzibean could be trained for their dream job. After a citizen completed the required training courses, they went to the correct building and started work. It encircled the entire city, making it easy for anyone to get to their job in the morning, most even able to ride a bike to their place of employment. Next to that, over her bedside table, were photos of the Triangle District, a massive tract of Lego houses where everyone in Civilizanzibean lived, bordered by Lincoln Log and Jenga block schools, including colleges, lined up in a perfect equilateral triangle. It was near enough to the Jobby Loop that anyone who didn't feel the need to finish a college curriculum could walk over and begin their training for the career of their choice. Pinned up on other walls were numerous other districts. Over her TV was the Sports Cubeplex, a massive facility where sports teams from child age to professional franchises played on the appropriate floor of their sport, sharing the same basketball courts, soccer fields, and hockey rinks built on top of a football stadium that can seat 120,000 fans on game day. Carney was a Giants fan, which explained why she wasn't worried about fans of other sports having ample seating to watch the game. Under the window was the Funtown Joy Square, a district where the people of Civilizanzibean could go to enjoy new movies, miniature golf, laser tag, video games, go-karts, and a combination water park year-round carnival where some of the roller coasters ejected the rider into the ocean. pinned to the closet door was Musicapalooza, a district dedicated to fans of any music genre being able to go and see their favorite acts without having to worry about getting tickets ahead of time. It was first come, first serve, but most of the acts were scheduled for 3 straight days, giving everyone a chance to see a musical act if they wanted. Kearney's newest construction project was a district tentatively named Government Chocolate Chip because the governing body of Civilizanzibean was rewarded with 2 scoops of her favorite ice cream flavor when they passed laws that helped the people of the city live better lives. Building the Citizens Talking House was giving her considerable trouble that night. It was a building where anyone could come and voice their concerns to Governor Susie Sick Moves between the hours of 2 and 4. Miss Sick Moves was, not coincidentally, also the winner of her season of So You Think You Can Dance. Other structures in the area had used up most of the Lego pieces, so the building was an architecturally troubling mixture of Connects, Lincoln Logs, and popsicle sticks. But in honesty, the whole thing was just a mess that Kearney was losing patience with. Footsteps approached her doorway from the other end of the hallway. Without looking at a clock, Kearney knew it was her mother coming to tell her it was past bedtime. A closed fist knocked twice, lightly on the peeling doorframe. Her mother always knocked like this. What are you working on? You lost track of time again. It's 30 minutes past your bedtime, her mother said. Kearney looked up, hoping to hide how tired she was. Mom, it's summer. All the other kids have later bedtimes, and she trailed off when she realized the approach wasn't working. I'm in the middle of building something. It's important. It looks like popsicle sticks and Lincoln Logs to me, her mother replied. There are no rules of architecture for a castle in the clouds. Gilbert K. Chesterton. Kearney spoke without looking away from her construction on the carpet. Art, like mortality, consists in drawing the line somewhere. Kearney looked up. Who said that? Her mother came and sat down on the carpet with her. Same guy. If you're going to pull quotes from my books, expect that I've already read them. She ran her fingers through Kearney's hair. I know you love building all of this. She motioned to the photographs on the wall. But I have to draw the line somewhere, and that line is helping you build a real future. Kearney, you know that your father and I never had it easy. If we don't win the lottery in the next 6 years, sending you to college for architecture just isn't going to be in the cards. You know this. Kearney rested her head on her mother's shoulder. I could get a scholarship, maybe. A hesitant frown flashed across her mother's face. Honey, baby, I love you to death, but we've both seen your grades, right? At some point, we're going to have to talk about a more realistic path for your life to take. Her mother got up from the floor and walked across the room to the bedroom door, looking at the photographs of the Super Eatery district. You're right, by the way. Kearney turned excitedly towards the door. I am? About what? Her mother smiled. It's summer. You should have a later bedtime. I'm going to bed, though. I'm exhausted. You can stay up for another 30 minutes, but I want you to think about what I said, okay? I will, Kearney said, beaming. After her mother went to bed, Kearney worked on the Citizens Talking House for another 30 minutes. Then she worked on it for another hour. Then she worked on it for 2.5 more. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, the building was in more pieces than it started. Kearney rested on her side to look it over closely from the carpet, not happy with the way it looked. It had a podium for the citizens to come and talk about the issues they faced in the city with Madam Governor Sick Moves, but it didn't have a roof for chairs or pretty much anything else other than a podium. If I lived in Civilizanzibean, I could have whatever job I wanted to have, she whispered with her fingers on the podium. She pulled her hand close to her chest and closed her eyes just to rest them. Without meaning to, Kearney fell asleep on the floor of her room. It felt like she was falling. Kearney flung her arms and legs out as she braced for impact against the ground, but she didn't hit the ground. She was still on the floor of her room, or at least that's where she seemed to be at first. She jumped from the ground and looked around in a panic. Where have all the photos gone? She puzzled. Every wall in her bedroom was bare. No Super Eatery, no Jobby Loop, no Funtown Joy Square, no Musicapalooza, no Triangle District, no Sports Cubeplex, and no sign of the Government Chocolate Chip she'd been working on the night before. Mom! She screamed in a panic. Mom, what happened to Civilizanzibean? But there was no answer. The house was eerily quiet, more quiet than any time Carney could remember. It was like no one had ever lived there at all. She rushed toward the door, but stopped as she caught a closer glimpse at one of the walls. Stunned fingers ran down the cool plastic surface across hundreds of cracks between tiny rectangles, robin's egg blue, just like her room had always been. Are these... No, that doesn't make any sense. She pressed her face up against what should have been her bedroom wall. They are. The walls in my room are made of Legos. 3 knocks on the front door of the house thundered down the hallway. Carney was terrified but didn't want to be alone, so she took off on a sprint for the front door. She flung the door open. "Mom?" she asked loudly, but the woman standing in the doorway wasn't her mother at all. In fact, Carney had never seen this person in her life, but at the same time, she knew exactly who it was. "I'm afraid I'm not your mom, love." The woman's voice was warm, decidedly British, and inviting enough that Carney did not slam the door in her face. "How are you, what?" The woman smiled. "Not the finest your English has ever been, but no time to waste. There is much to be done today. As my number 2 in command, I need to get your eyes on decisions to be made in 3 different districts." Governor Sick moves? Carney asked. Her voice was frail, perhaps terrified yet overcome with a feeling of safety. "Connie Phelps," the governor playfully scolded her. "I've told you repeatedly to call me Susie." She put her arm around Carney and ushered her out into the street. "There is quite a lot we must get done today. I'm sure you're as excited as I am to go and check out the status of so many of your projects. It's also very exciting, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?" Carney rubbed her eyes, but it didn't change the towering imagery before her. She was standing in the Triangle District, looking over a sea of houses at the massive skyscrapers looming from the Super Eatery District. It was everything she'd ever imagined, only much larger. "How is this real? You falling at your head or something?" Susie asked. "I swear, every time I pick you up for work, you sound like a nutter." Susie grabbed Carney's hand and began to walk her down the street. They rounded the corner, and directly in front of them was all of the schools that Carney had designed, exactly as she made them. There's Clarence Repeat High School. Oh, and over there is Hawthorne H. Burrito Elementary. Well, I should hope you recognized them, love. You built them. Susie put the back of her hand against Carney's forehead. "Are you sure you're feeling all right?" "I guess it's like I've never seen any of this before," Carney said, her gaze transfixed in wide-eyed amazement at everything they passed. They turned left off of the perfect 60-degree point of the Triangle District's outermost street. "First item of business today is a stop at the Sports Cubeplex." She could see it coming up over the horizon, a gigantic silver cube that was as tall as 4 football stadiums stacked on top of each other. What's wrong at the Cubeplex?" Carney asked, somewhat politely, somewhat accusatorily. "Slow down, my eager friend," Susie cautioned. "There's nothing wrong. In fact, it's one of my most favorite creations of yours. Everyone in the city loves it, and therein lies our problem. It's too popular." "That sounds like a pretty good problem to have." The skin on Carney's toes rubbed against the grass in front of the Cubeplex. It did not occur to her before this moment that she had not put on shoes before venturing out into the city. But it didn't bother her any. All of the cement sidewalks were so smooth and clean you didn't even need shoes. "Do you want to make it less popular?" Susie laughed. "Oh heavens, no. I just wanted to come by and see if you had any ideas for things we could do to add to it." A frown fell over the governor's face. "But there's a bit of a catch." She pulled a ream of construction paper out of a bag Carney was fairly certain was not with them when they left the house. "There's not really any more room in the budget for additional materials for a build-out. Think you could come up with something that would use the existing space in a creative way, maybe?" Carney grabbed a piece of lime green construction paper and stared at it for a moment. A flock of birds flew by and landed in a nearby tree, chirping in unison a pitch-perfect rendition of Fleetwood Mac's Rhiannon. She looked up at the roof and then back at the construction paper. She puzzled. She knelt down on the ground, holding the paper horizontally in a patch of dirt. Carney folded one corner down toward the middle and did the same with the other corner. It was like a paper airplane without a fold in the middle. She stood up and held it over her head, motioning toward the building. What if... She tossed the paper into the breeze, carrying it down the street and out of view. What if we made a bunch of hang gliders and put them in a rental shop up there? People could borrow them and tour the city by jumping off the roof. Susie clapped excitedly and gave Carney a hug. I knew I could count on you to come up with something brilliant. The birds in the trees switched songs to Queen's We Are the Champions. Artie knocked out the first problem of the day. Come. There is more to figure out. They walked around the Cubeplex, past the Musicapalooza and the Funtown Joy Square. When was the last time you visited the Super Eatery? Susie asked. As they approached it, Carney could hardly believe the size of the skyscrapers. Buildings 1 through 6 disappeared into the fluffy clouds of the sky. I honestly don't remember the last time I was over here, she lied. I'm really scared of heights, she truthed. Luckily today, we don't really need to go inside any of them. Unless you want to, that is. I'm okay down here, Carney said, still staring at the monolithic pillars she'd designed. What's the problem? A mushroom appeared in Susie's hand from inside of the bag. They walked over to the third building from the courtyard in the middle. I had to shut down production in Building 3 because nobody wants these. The number one complaint my office gets all the time is that we should retrofit the Zunga fungus building into a candy factory. Carney grabbed the mushroom out of Susie's hand, looking it over with hesitant disgust. Well, nobody ever brings a bag of mushrooms to snack on at the movie theater. I would imagine that won't be changing any time in the near future. It also doesn't solve our problem, love. What do you think we could do to get people to want mushrooms instead of candy? Susie grabbed the mushroom and put it back in the bag. A moment later, she pulled out a bag of sour, gummy sugar gators and ripped it open. I love these! She offered the bag over to Carney. They smelled delicious. Is this a trick? Are you tricking me right now? This feels like a trick, Carney said flatly. Susie paid attention only to the candy. What if we made like a gummy snack in the shape of a like a little mushroom? I don't really think that makes it any healthier or solves our problem, Carney said. Yeah, I suppose it was a crud idea. Are you sure you don't want one? Susie asked again, holding the bag invitingly out in front of her. Actually, can I see the mushroom again? Susie shrugged and reached back into the bag. Suit yourself. She handed the unreasonably large fungus back to Carney. The mushroom rotated thoughtfully in Carney's hand. She ripped out the stem and held the pieces apart. What if... She took a huge bite out of the stem and then a series of smaller ones, chiseling it down into a specific shape. It doesn't really taste like anything, Carney said, her mouth full of food. She placed the stem back in the upside-down base. It was now a perfectly serviceable bowl and spoon. If kids ate their morning cereal out of the top of a mushroom and got to make a spoon out of the stem, it kind of turns it into a fun game. Then when they're done, they get to eat the crunchy bowl and it tastes like their cereal. Also, there's less dishes to do as a result. Susie thought about it for a moment. That's entirely marvelous, love. You are my irreplaceable genius. She gave Carney a big kiss on the top of her head. Now, we must venture forth to the last item on our agenda for today. Does it involve mushrooms? Carney asked. Indeed it does not, and we can be all the happier for it. The governor ushered them onward. Within a city block, Carney knew exactly where they were going. The two walked past numerous construction signs and equipment, but there was no one working near any of it. Where are all the workers? Susie frowned. Government chocolate chip has been a struggle for all of us, but I don't need to tell you that. I know how trying this project has been for you. The entire government district was in disarray as they stepped into the center of it. Some of the buildings were beginning to fall apart. What happened? It's just government isn't fun. They looked up at the only building that was in any way constructed, the Citizens' Talking House. And I think I know what the problem is. Carney couldn't believe how bad everything looked like this, a mishmash of construction materials and absolute disorder. Okay, what's the problem then? Well, love, I believe it's that you're not having any fun. And if you're not having fun, then how on earth could we expect anyone else to? Susie brushed Carney's hair back behind her ear in the most familiar of ways. Carney felt a rush of guilt come over her. She bit her lower lip. I don't know if I can do it, Susie. I need help. Everyone needs help from time to time. That's the beauty of people when you think about it. There's almost always someone out there to lend us a hand if we're brave enough to ask for it. Susie got down on one knee and grabbed Carney by the shoulders. Do you think maybe that's something you could try? Carney looked down at the ground, full of sadness and embarrassment. She couldn't bear to look at the governor or the buildings she'd failed to create for the city. But what if I don't know who to ask? My dad is always working, and he barely has time to take the photos of the buildings as it is. None of my friends care about this, even though I do. I care more than anything. Well, it's simple, love. Well, how is it simple, Susie? Susie leaned in and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Just wake up. Carney's eyes popped open, staring at a puddle of drool she'd left on what appeared to be a rather squishy denim. Good morning, love. A voice just like Susie's spoke from behind her. Carney pushed off the ground and sat back on the carpet. She looked around the room as her eyes came into focus. All of the photos were back on the walls, and sitting in the middle of the floor was her mother, a beaming smile across her face.
Where did I fall me to sleep in with on the floor?
Carney asked, quite nonsensically. You did, her mother said. I felt really bad after our talk last night. I couldn't really sleep at all, so I came in here to check on you. Her voice changed back to the English one. You were talking in your sleep, love, so I decided that I'd talk back to you.
That was you?
Carney was desperately trying to remember all of the parts of her dream.
Your Governor Susie's sick moves?
Quite right. We solved all kinds of problems this morning. I must say, I am impressed. Her mother returned to her normal speaking voice. I thought the mushroom cereal bowl was a particularly clever touch. All of the events at the end of the dream came flooding back to Carney. Mom? Yes, love. How did you know so much about Civilizanzibean? I didn't know you'd ever really seen any of it before, but you know everything about it. All of the names, which I'd never even wrote down. Her mother smiled. Well, I wrote them down. I've always wanted to know everything about the city you've designed, even when maybe I was pushing you a little too hard to think about your future. She could tell her mother was fighting back tears. Carney rushed over and wrapped her arms tightly around her mother. Mom, could you help me build the government chocolate chip district, maybe? Of course, love. She rubbed Carney's back. But I have a condition should we enter into this construction agreement together. Carney pulled back, confused. You have a condition? I do. Her mother was crying. I talked with your father, and we don't know how yet, but no matter what, we're going to send you off to study architecture, and you need to promise me that you're going to do everything you can to build all of the amazing buildings you have swimming around in your head. Carney squeezed her mother as tight as she could. I promise. Her mother let go of her. Good, because we have to go get some mint chocolate chip ice cream and draw up some plans for the government district, okay? Carney grabbed her mother's hand and helped her off the floor. Well, Mother Sick Moves, I do believe you have yourself a deal. They walked out of the room holding hands, skipping down the hallway, discussing ideas on how best to make Civilizanzibean the best city the world had ever seen. The end.